Chapter 15. Nessa was beginning to think the dirt wall she followed was never going to end. When she paused to rest, which seemed often to her, she could no longer hear the breathing of the other people. She thought that was scary enough, but the absence of it, the sheer aloneness she felt in that damp, so dark place, was more terrifying than anything she'd ever known before. She felt like she'd walked miles. Her feet had gone so cold they were numb, but she had a pretty good idea how scratched up they must be by now, even as careful as she'd been. But then Nessa realized that the wall she'd been following had been straight for a long time, much longer than any room would need. For the first time she had a sense of something above her head, as if she could reach up and touch more dirt if only she were a few inches taller. A few more yards and she could have sworn she could make out a faint light ahead, very faint, not like daylight exactly, more like dusk. The final few yards were a climb, or felt like it, though she didn't realize until she at last reached the mouth of the shaft that she had climbed from gosh only knew how deeply underground. She stood there and for a moment closed her eyes to make sure the surface of her mind was still, calm, and without ripples. Remarkably, it was. She opened her eyes then, looked around to get her bearings, and wanted to burst into tears. Nothing looked familiar. Absolutely nothing. There was no sign of a cabin, much less a house. No sign of a shed. Trails crisscrossed through the woods all around her, but she couldn't see anything wide enough to show that a car had passed this way, or a horse, or a bike. Even worse, there were evergreen trees all around, filling in for the hardwood trees only now beginning to green out. And because of them, Nessa could only catch glimpses of the sky, the darkening sky. And faintly she could hear thunder rumble. Damn. She didn't dare say it out loud, and not only because that black snake of a him was still back there, and maybe by now knew she was gone. There was a lot of forest around Serenity. Back when she'd really liked to ride her pony, her father had taken her along a lot of the old trails that wound all through the forest, and Chief Riggs had made sure they were clearly marked, especially for Sunday riders. But she hadn't ridden in a long time, and nothing she was looking at looked familiar. Worse, it was getting darker, and if it stormed, even if she found some kind of shelter, what if he came after her? What if he found her? With a choke-back sob, Nessa picked a direction and struck out, trying to listen in case he was behind her, scanning in front of her to see where she was going as long as she could see, and wishing she could just stand and scream and scream and scream until somebody heard her and came to save her.